part of freedom. The opportunity to make it better, to go up in the system, is key. Throughout all of human history, societies today, throughout much of the world, it just simply isn't this way. You're born into a system, a level, whether it's the bottom, the middle, or the upper, and there you stay. And there your family and friends stay. This is not so in America.
Come on. These 3/4, I've heard some statistics where it's up to 90% of the wealth of our nation is held by the top 5%. All right? What are you talking about? Will you just get with a rational, realistic number and deal with that real equation, okay? The real work, the real productivity. The reason why people have to work 2 or 3 jobs and a family can't live like they lived in the 70s is because the rich are getting richer, not because there's any kind of mobility.
America, and in this model I'm describing, the Western capitalist democratic system. This is a major part of why the system is so wildly prosperous and successful.
Again, wildly prosperous and successful. All right, it's wildly prosperous because it capitalizes on exploitation. I mean, we haven't even talked about what we did to South America for, 3 or 4 decades. We exploit, okay? That's it. It's an exploitionist philosophy. All right, yes, and exploitation is productive for the people doing the exploiting, okay? But it's not too good for the people getting exploited.
No social mobility pretty much does equal oppression. The opportunity for social mobility is the opposite.
Oh, that's the end of that one. Okay, I'll go on to part 2. What the hell, right? You got nothing better to do. Listen to 10 hours of this stuff. No, really. I mean, it doesn't make any other points, really. So it's going to be just more of the same. But I just might as well do the whole smear.
Of why the system is so wildly prosperous and successful. No social mobility pretty much does equal oppression. The opportunity for social mobility is the opposite of oppression. In order to deal with...
No, the freedom to exploit, okay, that's not a legitimate right, okay? It's not. All right, you can say it is. It's somehow that's our legacy. We've always exploited each other. We've always fed each other to the lions. So we should just keep doing that. No, okay, that's the difference between civilized humans and uncivilized humans.
Past historical wrongs and mistakes. A lot of people on the left, a lot of neo-Marxists, cultural Marxists, think that...
You mean anti-Ayn Randiest lunatics like yourself. So we just used the maligning rhetoric in reverse again. So you mean anti-Ayn Rand loonies like you.
The redistribution of wealth from the top and the middle to the lower, or from the top to the middle, if you will. The redistribution of wealth is the best way to redress the inequalities. And I'm here to say that it is...
Look, the substance of the unpaid taxes that have us at $13 trillion worth of debt as a nation are on income taxes, the wealthy people taxes, okay? The non-progressive taxes, the payroll taxes, the health care, Medicare, unemployment, Social Security, the property taxes, those aren't being assessed in any kind of progressive based on income manner. No, they're just taxed on every little roof that's over every human being's head. Okay, the same. Whether you're rich or poor, you're going to get nailed.
And that what that does is create a class of people who start to think that they are entitled to be moved up. They feel that they are being oppressed.
They're not feeling it, they're knowing it, they're seeing it, they're being exploited. They're in a position where they can't negotiate a fair contract, a fair wage, all right, because of circumstances. They know their work is valuable. They know they have to sell out to the man and let somebody else steal the value of their work, because of the system we have, because we have a closed system where competition is going to be dictated by monopolies, by big corporate money, by inherited money.
Just because they are not moved up and they look to the governments to automatically redistribute wealth to them and move them up without...
Yeah, well, what is exactly... Okay, so your argument is redistribution is wrong, but somehow birthright is right. So it's okay for somebody to inherit money, okay, but to redistribute money is really bad. Wrong, 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 wrong. I mean, how do you make any logical sense out of that? Okay, one is an obvious cheat in this race. There's obviously not a fair horse race if you allow half the horses to start halfway down the track and a quarter of the horses to start about 10 feet from the finish line. Who would show up for that race? Who would bet on the guys starting at the real starting line? Who would invest their money in those horses? Anybody? Any rational person? No. That's the world we exist in. Deal with that reality. And so redistribution is basically saying, let's do something to fix that. That's really broken. That's not a horse race any rational person can make any money on.
Earning it. It's all about the opportunity. It's not about being entitled. This is another reason our model has worked so.
So people aren't entitled to a minimum respect for their dignity, and we shouldn't have a minimum respect for 8 hours of work. So as long as there's enough desperation waiting in line, it's okay, it's legitimate, it's ethical to negotiate the worst possible contract for those people in the line as possible. To force them to put their starving kids in competition with each other, okay, for who lives and dies, and for you as some rich prick capitalist to sit there and do that to people, to manipulate people that way. And you think that is something to celebrate. I mean, you're a despicable creature.
Well, because it's kind of a B.F. Skinner behaviorism carrot and stick thing. The incentive is there for each individual or each couple or each family or each group. The incentive is there because the opportunity is there.
Okay, let's talk about that opportunity. Okay, let's say I'm just an average bimbo and I marry myself a millionaire, okay? He's got 10 million, 20 million, 30 million dollars. Okay, and I live in a little community, right? And there's a florist shop. And I don't like the guy, okay? He's got a big nose and he's nasty to me. And I say, I'm going to go into the flower business. And so what do? I set up shop across the street. I have little daddy Warbucks build me a shop, you know, pay me to have my own little store, okay? And I basically say, well, look, I can lose money for a couple of years. What's the big deal? Okay, but that guy across the street, now he has 4 kids and a wife and a family. He's got to make a living selling those flowers. He can't afford not to make money, okay? He has to make money, all right? And so here he has to compete now with this bimbo across the street who did no work of her own to earn that capital that built that store. And now he's got to compete with somebody who can afford to lose money for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. And you're going to tell me that that has something to do with opportunity. No, it has to do with being in the right place at the right time. And if you end up in the wrong business at the wrong time, you can do everything right, and this system will kill you. All right? It'll kill you. It'll push you out a window. All right, and that's what you're defending, because you can't moderate your rhetoric, you can't use any rational thought. You're just so fucking narrow-minded, so stuck in your Adam Smith, Ayn Rand, bullshit, might makes right psychology. God, I can feel the reflux. You are just so disgusting.
For you to work hard and to move up, not because you're entitled, not because wealth should be redistributed to you, but because...
No, it should be handed out by birthright, right? That's the way we should run the world. Birthright, that makes much more sense. That's so frigging logical, right? Birthright. God, come on.
You have earned it, so it brings out the best in people because it's the best way to motivate people to be successful.
Yeah, no, it's the best way to motivate people to be crooks and cheats and thieves. I mean, it happens every day. Some crook will call me on my telephone and tell me they're my credit card company when they're not. And we see it all over the internet. There's liars and cheaters and scumbags everywhere because you people keep preaching this world where you have no obligation to the rest of society. It's all about you and what you can get. Those are the wrong kind of incentives. We should pay people to do productive work. We shouldn't pay them to find cracks to shove their little shivs in and, you know, pull the guts out of society. Fuck that shit.
It's also why communist systems don't work. Socialist systems don't work.
Well, again, there's plenty of socialism taking place in Europe right now, and they're going to probably survive this crisis better than we are.
If the human being, or the group of human beings, or the family of human beings, is just given everything he or she needs.
Yeah, and who's advocating we just give everything to everybody? Everything they need, we just give it to them. Who's advocating that? And it certainly has nothing to do with my videos. I mean, you post this as a response to one of my videos. Did you watch the other 4 parts in that economics series? Where did I talk about giving anybody anything? What I talked about is basically taking the surplus and giving it to the people that created it, and quit playing this birthright game, okay? The guy who is industrious has a right to acquire some wealth, yes, period. But that has to end there. You can't give it to people who have not earned it, okay? You can't pass it on to people who did nothing to create it.
Or she tends to become fulfilled and lazy and unmotivated.
Yeah, know what? You become all of those things. You become unmotivated when you see that you're trapped. Okay, that you don't have a way to compete, that there's no way you can compete because, okay, I have to scrimp and save to put some money together to go into my business, and I'm going to get nailed because that other guy has got venture capitalist and he's got this and he's got that. He's got more parachutes than I got. So when we get into this risk-taking game, I'm taking the real risk. I got spikes waiting for me at the bottom, all right, and he's got parachutes. All right, so no, that's what destroys incentive, is when people see futility. When they see futility in their future, that's what destroys frickin' incentives. And that's the society we've created for most people.
Because he or she is being spoiled and given everything, usually by the government, that is redistributing wealth. So there's no, this is basic behaviorism. There's no...
Yeah, well, basic behaviorism that you back up with nothing. Again, you back it up with nothing. The only freebies out there are usually given out to people who have kids to extort us with. All right? And if it wasn't for that scenario, most people aren't all that... look, we still have people homeless on the street. Okay? War veterans, even homeless on the street. And no one's up in arms and saying, let's give them all a handout and all that. Well, it's not that no one is. There's plenty of people advocating for them. But don't sit there and pretend that our system now is blighted by its burden that it's doing by keeping a bunch of mental patients on the street. I mean, come on. That's the vice of our capitalist system. That's what we have to clean up, is the little bit of care we give to human beings who are broken. And that's the wrong in our capitalist system. We just get rid of that wrong and everything will be just great. So if we just eat the poor, then everything will be just fine. God, you really are a sick bastard.
Motivation to better oneself. Now, I will say that the communist or socialist or Marxist ideal of everybody being all equal is very appealing to a lot of people.
Well, like I say, there's no point in straw manning on this subject. There are lots of different diagrams of economic theory. There's really no point in throwing them in a category. Yours is the simplistic generalization. You're the one saying free market capitalism bullshit. Okay, you're the one saying this system works. Okay, there aren't other people saying, I'm a old Soviet Union defender. Where are these people that you're arguing with? I say they don't exist. Okay? They're a canard you make up just to malign anybody who says, let's fix the system we have. Let's make the system we have better. Let's find a better way to distribute these incentive carrots. So anybody who challenges your myopic religion, you sit there and categorize as a goddamn fucking communist. And it's a bullshit tactic.
This is why they opt into a socialist, Marxist, or communist system. This is why they remain at the teat of big socialized communist governments.
Yeah, there's no point in talking about teats, okay, when 3/4 of the wealth of this country is in the pockets of people who did nothing in their entire life but suck at a rich teat.
Despite howls to the contrary, our model has been, comparatively speaking, a wild human rights success story. The communist Marxist...
Yeah, where are the human rights for the Chinamen? Where are the human rights for the Mexicans? Where are these human rights for the people in Love Canal? Where are the human rights for the people in DuPaul? Why are you know, it's just bullshit, okay? Exploitation doesn't have anything to do with human rights. It's the antithesis of human rights, and that's what our economic system is based on. Okay, we have a minimum wage that is an insult and a disgrace to the dignity of human beings. All right, it is not something to celebrate.
Marxist socialist story has been a human rights nightmare. Millions and millions of people have been killed under it.
Yeah, well, when was the last Frenchman killed under it? Or when was the last, you know, we can go through, like I said, there's lots of Scandinavian countries. We can go through the list of these different versions of economic theory, all right? I mean, you'd probably consider England socialist because it has socialized medicine, right? So where's all the blood and the guts on the streets of England?
I mean, millions more oppressed throughout history, especially throughout the 20th century. This is a main reason why it's failed. The main reason why the Soviet Union failed. In addition to it,
yeah, well, so I can use this kind of cheap, dumb rhetoric when the capitalist system failed? I mean, you know, it's just a cheap shot. Your system is going to fail because the greedy went too far, too much debt, too much printed money. All right, now the system's going to fail, and so I should just have some sort of generic word failure over it. I shouldn't describe exactly what part of it was wrong and broken. I mean, we know why capitalism isn't going to work. It's not going to work because it consolidates wealth. Okay, and if you give it liberal banking policy, it's good to have liberal banking, but if the only objective is not a social objective and instead it's a personal objective, we see what happens. People do things they know are unsustainable, they know they're socially destructive, but they do them because they can personally profit from it. And that's what your system does. People don't work to be productive for society, they work to be productive for their motherfucking selves.
Economically unsuccessful. What I see today in America, and why I make a lot of videos railing against ultra-liberals, is I don't think...
And what is your definition of an ultra-liberal exactly? You know, anybody who's not an Ayn Rand fucktard like yourself, presumably, correct?
A lot of people in America, in modern industrial capitalist Western society, are actually being oppressed. But because our system tends to spoil people, because it's so successful.
Spoil people? Why don't you go talk to the average working person and ask them if they feel spoiled? I don't think so. I don't think the average guy making $45,000 trying to pay off a home and take care of a couple of kids is saying, I'm spoiled. You really are disgusting.
And progressive. It tends to make us spoiled brats. It just does. Who are not grateful for what we have. And
oh, yeah. So what is Hilton then? If we're spoiled brats, the people scraping by, what is the Hilton bitch riding in her limo? I mean, you've kind of taken all the meaning out of the word spoiled. If you can apply it to people who are actually trying to do the right thing and compare it to people who did nothing. They've done nothing of merit in their entire existence, and yet they have control over other people's lives. I mean, that is just so disgusting.
I see a lot of groups, minorities, what have you, bitching because they are not the dominant majority. Simply not being the dominant majority.
No, they're bitching because they don't have the same basic civil rights that other people have. All right? And being a minority is not fun. All right? And the least you should be able to get is a few guarantees that you can get access to a job, and you can have access to a home, and you can have access to public services in some sort of manner that approaches fairness. And that's what people advocate for. All right? And, not to, I won't even get into the whole what we owe people thing, but there is a debt to be paid. All right, we took huge advantage for hundreds of years of people, and to sit there and say it doesn't mean anything and has no repercussions into the future, and it has nothing to do with where people stand in the economy today or in society today is just bullshit.
Is not the same as being oppressed. Every society that has ever existed of any scale is going to have minorities and it's going to have majorities, unless you want to do an Adolf Hitler Nazi thing.
Yeah, again, so there's only two choices, right? We either exploit our majority status, we either take advantage of people merely because we outnumber them, or we are Nazis. Those are the only two choices, right? I mean, come on.
Eliminate all the minorities and just try and create this one master race, which is not very humane.
Yeah, and it's just some of your reverse psychology, because you are kind of the master racy type. You are kind of the, I love my white kind of people, and I don't like these uppities, these uppities of the rest of the world, presuming to say they're entitled to play the game too. Okay, it's a game. You own the game. You have the legacy wealth. You have the legacy capital. It's your game. No new players allowed. You either be a pawn in my game or you don't get to play at all. I mean, fuck you.
The way it's going to be. The best you can hope for is a system like ours that has a system of fair redress for real problems and social ills that come up.
Yeah, really. That social redress is almost impossible to access now as a practical matter. Courts don't even write decisions anymore. They've so copped out. They have what's called unpublished decisions. They're not even legal precedent anymore. They've blown up the whole thing. They have no accountability. They can't be sued for maliciously violating your constitutional rights. A man sitting on a court bench can maliciously, deliberately, with sadistic veal, or whatever you want to call it, can sit there and crucify you, okay, can put you in jail, can take your money, can do anything he wants to you, and he can do it maliciously, and you have no redress against that activity. None.
And it has social mobility and guaranteed rights and freedoms.
It doesn't have guaranteed rights and freedoms, not enough of them. Okay, there's not, and we have threats from people like you that would like to unwrite the few guarantees that we do have. You'd like to unwrite the minimum wage. You'd like to unwrite any laws that say you can't discriminate against people because you don't like the way they smell, or you don't like how big their nose are, the color of their eyes, or some other bullshit. You'd like to unwrite all those minimum standards.
The irony of our system is it creates, for example, people like the Reverend Jesse Jackson or Jeremiah Wright, who have prospered mightily.
Yeah, or Jerry Falwell, or Jimmy Swaggart, or, we could come up with lots of people. We got this Alex Jones guy now. He's prospering mightily, selling a bunch of fucking hysterical nonsense. The New World Order's come to eat us all. The Banderburgers and stuff. They're going to make sandwiches out of us and eat us. I mean, come on. There's assholes in every political stream of life. Big deal.
Who have ascended into the upper levels of privilege by railing against the system.
Well, they're not really in the upper levels, but even if they are in a level, okay, like I said, there's plenty of people, Rush Limbaugh, who just, exploited moronic rhetoric like you speak, okay, for his own fucking aggrandizement, for his own personal wealth. So what? You would call him some sort of freedom fighter, right? Some sort of civil rights bibble babbler, right? But he's no different than the rest of them. It's all propaganda, just like you're demonstrating here. It's all straw men. It's all fake argument. It has nothing to do with anything real. It just has to do with fooling people into the perception that, yeah, somehow I identify with this idea that I should have a fair fight, and you're sitting there somehow offering it, and you're offering exactly the opposite. You're offering to dress people up as rabbits and put them in the lion cage.
Bitching about how unfair the system is. This is a paradox. I call this the ladder paradox.
Yeah, well, I call you the idiot paradox, It's not even a paradox, though, so it's just the idiocy. It's the idiocy of human beings, the gullible morons who fall for anything, okay? The little weak-minded people, the little weak psychological people who keep thinking there's somebody trying to steal what they have because they want something called fairness, okay? Because they like the unfair fight. They like a fight where, okay, I have an advantage, and I want to retain my advantage. And that's all you're about. You're just about retaining advantages.
Because a lot of these people climb the ladder by railing against the ladder. It's just one of those quirky paradoxes of a free society.
Yeah, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the underlying principles, which are civil rights, okay? So let's just malign the whole cause because some of the preachers are jerks. I mean, that's just so stupid.
We have freedom of speech. But the truth is, none of these civil rights leaders or community activists or oppressed minorities.
Yeah, none of you elitist bigots, big, fat, fucktarded bigots
would want to live in any other kind of system, or any other kind of society, or any other kind of country.
Yeah, sure they wouldn't. Yeah, that's bullshit. Okay, they're fighting for something called justice. And like I said, just because you can find some players who are insincere in the fight doesn't mean the fight is wrong, doesn't mean the cause is wrong. All right, it's just cheap rhetoric.
Because they don't. They stay here. So simply being a minority, simply not being in the dominant majority, does not mean you are being oppressed.
Yeah, the advantaged majority. I mean, come on. No one's making the argument. It's simply because they're making the argument that obviously these are the results of what happens when you have people in positions where they are powerless to fight for something better or to protect their own dignity, where they are abusable. Okay, they can be exploited, and what we have is evidence that they are exploited.
Your personal or group preferences not be in the dominant majority does not equal horrible capitalist oppression by the man.
Well, the evidence is completely the contrary, okay? Where people have the freedom to be assholes and bigots and to act on it, they will. And that's why you create civil rights legislation that tells people, no, if you get caught doing that, we're going to spank you, okay? Because it's not nice, it's not right, it's not intelligent, it's not dignified, it's not civilized.
It's really what's behind political correctness, a lot of it. But anyway, I see a lot of bitching and whining from people who just are simply...
And listen to you bitching and whining. I hear a lot of this bitching and whining from people who've had every advantage, and then they complain because somebody talked about the word fair. Oh, no, I don't want to hear about fairness. No, I want to keep it the way it is. Unfairness is fun. Yeah.
Upset because they're not in the dominant majority. Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah, well, that's just so easy to say. I mean, you should live your life in a minority. Apparently you have no capacity to even have any kind of empathy at all. No capacity to understand somebody else's position or somebody else's place in the world. That's all you can see. And so then you use some kind of cheap rhetoric, like your little boo-hoo rhetoric. Boo-hoo, you were a slave for 200 years. Boo-hoo, we didn't educate you. Boo-hoo, we didn't give you your acres and a mule. Boo-hoo, we, kept you segregated in slums. Boo-hoo. Fuck you.
And a lot of these groups and people say we need a more progressive society. But if you compare our model, our system, to a whole lot of other models and systems and countries throughout the world, you will...
Yeah, let's go find a dirtier bug than a cockroach, and then we can make the cockroach look cool and neat and pretty. But let's not dare compare the cockroach to a human being, a dignified human being. Let's not compare it to Aristotle or something, or Einstein. No, let's just compare it to shit. And then the shit will look a whole lot better if you put the shit next to a shit pile. Yeah, the shit looks great. All right, but why don't you take on the real hard challenge of comparing what we have done to better systems where people have a higher standard of living, okay, and a better society and less violence and less of a lot of things.
Very quickly see that ours is by far the most humane and the most progressive model.
Yeah, and it's just a stupid argument, okay? It's not about what is, it's about what should be, what could be, all right? And our model is stupid. Birthright is idiotic. Legacy wealth is fucktarded. It's idiotic social policy. It makes no sense whatsoever. There's no rational argument that can defend it. It creates unproductive human beings, not productive human beings.
Way of being, way of socially organizing. It's also the most prosperous and successful. Now it's not.
Well,
perfect,
again,
of course.
Again, how can it's just such an indignity to workers to sit there and use this word, this it's so prosperous, without accepting and acknowledging that a lot of that prosperity is built out of exploitation, hard abuse of human beings.
This is why we've had to have a civil rights movement. This is why the core of feminism and the feminist movement is solid. Isn't it good to be living in a system where these problems can be redressed and actual progressive change of serious cultural, social problems can result, and result rather quickly?
Yeah, so there, that last little bit made sense, but the rest of your videos where you were arguing exactly the opposite. You're calling out all boo-hoo stuff. You were maligning, insulting those very same causes. You say that we've got it now. We can't improve it any more than we did now, okay? So we did the civil rights thing, and the core of it was good, and blah, blah, blah. But there's nothing else to fix about the system. We've now perfected it because we have 3/4 or 90% of the wealth in the hands of 5% of the people, and that's perfect. Yeah, fail. So anyway, don't like you, fella. So that's it. That's enough. 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 parts on this one. So till next time.